Dr. Kang Minho walked down the long metal hallway of Station Nexus Prime. His footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. The station was huge, floating in space far from any planet. It was the most secure place in the galaxy, or so everyone said. Minho worked here, but he was not important. He was just a human, and humans were not important to the Galactic Council. The hallway led to Lab Section 7. This was where Minho spent most of his time. Inside the lab were thousands of strange chambers. Each chamber was made of smooth white metal that seemed to glow with its own light. The chambers were arranged in perfect rows like sleeping pods in a giant dormitory. They had been found floating in deep space 800 years ago, and nobody knew where they came from. Inside each chamber was a human. They were all sleeping, frozen in time. The council scientists called it cryo sleep. These sleeping humans had been found by a Vextar exploration ship. The Vextar were tall, thin aliens with purple skin and 4 arms. They thought they were the smartest species in the galaxy. They brought the chambers to this station to study them. Minho stopped in front of Chamber 1847. Inside, he could see a woman with black hair. Her face was peaceful, like she was having a nice dream. The chamber's display showed green lights, which meant she was alive and healthy. All the chambers showed green lights. After 800 years, every single human inside was still alive. Still talking to your sleeping friends, human? Minho turned around. Dr. Velkaris stood behind him. She was a Vextar scientist with bright purple skin and cold yellow eyes. She was Minho's boss, though she never let him forget that he was beneath her. I was checking the readings, Minho said quietly. He had learned not to argue with the Vextar. It only made things worse. These chambers are a waste of space, Velkaris said. Her forearms moved as she talked, a sign that she was annoyed. 800 years we have studied them. 800 years of trying to open them. Nothing works. They are useless, just like all humans. Minho said nothing. He had heard this speech many times before. The council had tried everything to open the chambers. They used lasers, acids, sonic waves, and even nuclear tools. The chambers would not break. They would not open. The sleeping humans inside remained safe and untouched. At least the humans we found outside the chambers are useful, Velkaris continued. They can clean floors and carry boxes. But these sleeping ones? They do nothing but take up space. The humans she talked about were people like Minho. There were maybe a few thousand humans scattered across the galaxy. Most had come from old colony ships that left Earth long ago. They worked as janitors, cargo handlers, and low-level researchers. The other species in the council barely noticed them. Minho's communicator beeped. A message appeared on the small screen. It was from Ambassador Yun Jiwoo, the only human who worked directly with the council. The message was simple. Council meeting today. Dractyl making threats again. The Dractyl were scary aliens. They looked like giant lizards with sharp teeth and red eyes. They were strong and mean, and they liked to fight. Their leader was War Chief Thokmar, who was known for his cruelty. The Dractyl controlled several star systems, but they wanted more. I need to review the daily reports, Minho told Velkaris. She waved one of her hands and walked away, her feet making clicking sounds on the metal floor. Minho turned back to the chambers. He looked at the sleeping woman again. Sometimes he wondered what these people were dreaming about. Sometimes he wondered who they really were. The few records found with the chambers were in an old human language that nobody could read completely. The council scientists thought the sleeping humans were probably farmers or traders who got lost in space. But Minho was not so sure. There was something about the chambers that felt different. They were too advanced, too perfect. The technology was beyond anything humans in the galaxy could build now. And there were so many of them. Thousands and thousands of chambers, all identical, all working perfectly after 8 centuries. He walked to his small office at the end of the lab. The room was tiny, with just a desk, a chair, and a computer. On his desk was a picture of his family. His parents had died when he was young, but his sister Park Yoonji worked on a cargo ship in the Outer Rim. They talked once a month if they were lucky. Minho sat down and started reading the daily reports. Chamber temperatures were normal. Life support systems were working. Energy levels were stable. Everything was exactly the same as yesterday, and the day before that, and every day for the past 5 years since he started working here. But today, something was different. Minho looked closer at the readings. The neural activity monitors, which usually showed flat lines, had small spikes. They were tiny, almost too small to notice. But they were there. He pulled up the news feeds on his computer. The main story was about the Dractyl again. War Chief Thokmar had given another angry speech. He said the council was weak. He said strong species should rule over weak ones. He said the Dractyl deserved more territory, more resources, more respect. Minho looked back at the neural readings. The spikes were bigger now. It was like the sleeping humans could somehow hear what was happening in the galaxy, but that was impossible. The chambers blocked all outside signals. The council had tested this many times. His communicator beeped again. This time it was an emergency alert. The Dractyl fleet had moved to the edge of council space. They were demanding that 3 star systems surrender or face consequences. The council was calling an emergency meeting. Minho saved his work and got ready to leave. As he walked past the chambers, he looked at the sleeping humans one more time. The woman in chamber 1847 looked the same as always, peaceful and calm. But the neural monitors on her chamber were showing more activity than he had ever seen. In the distance, alarms started ringing. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Emergency broadcasts began playing over the station's speakers. The voice was calm but urgent. All council representatives report to the main assembly hall immediately. Priority Alpha situation in progress. Minho stopped walking. He looked back at the chambers. For just a moment, he thought he saw something impossible. The woman's eyes seemed to move behind her closed eyelids, like she was waking up from a bad dream. But when he looked again, she was still sleeping peacefully. He hurried toward the assembly hall, wondering what the Dractyl had done now. Behind him, thousands of chambers hummed quietly in the darkness, their sleeping occupants dreaming dreams that nobody understood. The galaxy was about to change, but nobody knew it yet. The sleepers were still sleeping, but something deep inside their minds was beginning to stir. 800 years of peace was coming to an end. The emergency meeting lasted 6 hours. Dr. Kang Minho sat in the back of the great assembly hall, watching hundreds of alien representatives argue and shout at each other. The hall was enormous, with rows of seats rising up like a giant theater. Each species had their own section, marked by different colored lights. Ambassador Yoon Ji-woo sat alone in the human section. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes. The human section had only 5 seats, while the Vextar Empire had 50. The message was clear. Humans did not matter much in the Galactic Council. High Counselor Velnash stood at the center podium. He was the leader of the Vextar Empire, tall and proud with skin so purple it looked almost black. His 4 arms moved gracefully as he spoke, but his words were not graceful at all. The Dractyl are making empty threats, he said in his deep voice. They have done this before. They complain, they demand, they wave their weapons around. Then they go home. We should ignore them. Many aliens in the hall nodded and made sounds of agreement. The Trelawney, who looked like blue dolphins with arms, clicked their approval. The Rocktar, who were made of living stone, rumbled their agreement like distant thunder. But Ambassador Yoon Ji-woo stood up. Her voice was small in the huge hall, but she spoke clearly. The Dractyl fleet has tripled in size over the past year. Their new bioweapons have been tested on their own prison planets. This is not an empty threat. The hall went quiet for a moment. Then Velnash laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The human speaks of weapons she has never seen, of threats she cannot understand. Perhaps she should return to her cleaning duties and leave these important matters to her betters. Laughter filled the hall. Minho felt his face burn with shame and anger. Jiwoo sat down slowly, her hands shaking. She had spent years trying to warn the council about the Dractyl, but nobody listened to her. The meeting ended with no decisions. The council would send a diplomatic message to War Chief Thokmar. They would ask him politely to stop threatening people. They would hope he would be reasonable. 3 days later, the Dractyl attacked. The first world to fall was Kepler 7, a peaceful planet where the Hanari grew their famous crystal gardens. The Hanari were gentle plant people who had never hurt anyone. Their planet was beautiful, covered in forests of living crystal that sang in the wind. The attack came without warning. Dractyl ships appeared in the sky like black clouds. They dropped weapons that the council had never seen before. Green liquid fell like rain from the ships. Where it touched the ground, the crystal gardens melted. Where it touched the Hanari, they screamed and dissolved. The Hanari tried to surrender, but the Dractyl did not accept surrender. They wanted to test their new bioweapons. In 6 hours, 3 billion Hanari were dead. The crystal gardens were gone forever, turned into green sludge that poisoned the soil. The second attack came on Rigel Station, a trading post where dozens of species lived together in peace. The station was home to 2 million beings, families, children, elderly grandparents who told stories of the old days. The Dractyl used different weapons here. This time they used sonic disruptors that turned living tissue into liquid from the inside out. They broadcast the attack live across the galaxy. War Chief Thokmar appeared on every screen, his red eyes glowing with joy as he watched people die behind him. He was huge, even for a Dractyl, with dark green scales and teeth like metal knives. "This is what happens to the weak," he said in his terrible voice. "The strong take what they want. The weak die screaming. Choose which one you want to be." The third attack was the worst. The Dractyl hit New Geneva, a human colony world. It was one of the few places where humans had built something beautiful. The planet had green hills, clean rivers, and small cities where human families lived in peace. The Dractyl did not just destroy New Geneva. They captured it. They took the humans alive and put them in cages. They broadcast their torture sessions every day at the same time. Children cried for their parents. Parents begged for their children's lives. The Dractyl laughed and hurt them more. Minho watched the broadcast in his small office. He could not stop watching, even though it made him sick. The faces on the screen could have been his sister, his friends, his neighbors. They were human faces, and they were screaming. The council met again, but this time the mood was different. The Great Assembly Hall was full of fear. Representatives whispered to each other in worried voices. Some species had already started moving their fleets away from Dractyl space. High Counselor Velnash was not laughing anymore. His purple skin had turned pale and his forearms shook as he spoke. "These attacks are unfortunate, but we must not act in haste. The Dractyl want us to be afraid. If we respond with violence, we become like them. 3 worlds are gone," shouted Ambassador Kreltum of the Zephyrian Alliance. The Zephyrians looked like giant birds with silver feathers. "Billions are dead. How much more death do you need to see?" "The Dractyl have superior numbers," Velnash replied. "Their bioweapons are unknown to us. A direct military response would be suicide. We must try diplomacy." Ambassador Yoon Jiwoo stood up again. This time the hall did not laugh at her. "My people are being tortured right now, this very moment, while we sit here and talk. How many more will die while you try diplomacy with monsters?" "Your people," Velnash said coldly, "are few in number and contribute little to the council. Perhaps if humans had something of value to offer, they would not be such easy targets." Jiwoo's face went white with anger. "What about the sleepers? The humans in the cryo chambers? They might have knowledge, technology, something that could help us fight back. Those ancient relics?" Velnash waved one of his hands dismissively. "We have studied them for 800 years. They are nothing but failed colonists who got lost in space. Even if we could wake them, what could a few thousand primitive humans do against the Dractyl war machine?" The debate went on for hours, but nothing was decided. The council sent another diplomatic message to War Chief Thokmar. This time they offered him trade agreements and mining rights. They hoped he would be satisfied with bribes. Thokmar's response came the next day. He appeared on every screen in the galaxy again, but this time he was standing in the ruins of New Geneva's capital city. Behind him, human prisoners hung in metal cages. Some were children no older than 10 years old. "Your gifts amuse me," Thokmar said, his voice full of mockery. "But I do not want your trade agreements. I want your submission. I want your worlds. I want your people to bow down before the Dractyl Empire, or I want them to die screaming like these humans." He gestured to the cages behind him. Dractyl soldiers began torturing the prisoners while the cameras watched. The screams echoed across the galaxy, reaching every world, every station, every ship in council space. Minho turned off his screen. He could not watch anymore. He walked through the empty corridors of Station Nexus Prime, past the labs and offices until he reached the chamber room. The thousands of cryopods hummed quietly in the darkness, their green lights glowing like stars. He went to chamber 1847, where the sleeping woman rested. Her face was still peaceful, but the neural activity monitors were going crazy. Lines of data scrolled across the screens faster than he could read them. The sleeping woman's brain was more active than any living person he had ever seen. Minho checked other chambers. They were all the same. Every single sleeping human showed massive neural activity. It was like they were having the most intense dreams of their lives all at the same time. On his communicator, emergency alerts kept buzzing. More Dractyl fleets were moving. More worlds were being threatened. The torture broadcasts from New Geneva continued every hour, each one worse than the last. Minho looked at the sleeping woman again. "I wish you could wake up," he whispered. "I wish you could tell us what to do." For just a moment, the woman's face seemed to change. Her peaceful expression became something else. Something cold. Something angry. Something that looked very much like the face of someone who was planning revenge. But then she was sleeping peacefully again, and Minho thought he had imagined it all. 6 months had passed since the first Dractyl attack. Dr. Kang Minho barely recognized the galaxy anymore. Every day brought news of another world falling, another species surrendering, another million souls lost to War Chief Thokmar's hunger for death. The great assembly hall of Station Nexus Prime was half empty now. Many species had stopped sending representatives to council meetings. The Aquarians had retreated to their underwater cities and refused all communication. The Crystalline Collective had gone silent, their worlds dark and cold. Even the proud bird people of Eros had abandoned their sky cities and fled to distant stars. Minho sat in his usual spot at the back of the hall, watching the remaining council members argue with desperate voices. Ambassador Yoon Jiwoo looked older than her 60 years, her hair now completely white and her hands always shaking. The stress of watching her people die while the council did nothing had broken something inside her. High Counselor Vel Nash stood at the central podium, but he was not the same proud leader from 6 months ago. His purple skin had faded to a sickly gray color, and his forearms moved nervously as he spoke. The Vextar Empire had lost 12 colony worlds in the past month. Their mighty fleets had proven useless against Dractyl bioweapons. "We must consider our remaining options carefully," Vel Nash said, his voice cracking like old paper. "The Dractyl advance continues, but they cannot maintain this pace forever. Their supply lines must be stretched thin. Their supply lines include 27 conquered worlds," shouted Commander Rixnell of the Beetle Federation. The Beetles were usually calm and logical, but months of retreat had made them angry. "They don't need supply lines when they can strip entire planets for resources." Minho had seen the reports. The Dractyl were not just conquering worlds. They were consuming them. They took everything useful and left behind dead rocks floating in space. Worse, they kept some populations alive specifically for torture. The daily broadcast from New Geneva continued, showing human prisoners who begged for death that never came. "What about the human suggestion?" asked Ambassador Trilka of the Deep Sea Alliance. Her blue skin had lost its shine and her dolphin-like voice was barely a whisper. "The sleeping humans in the cryo chambers. Perhaps we should investigate them more thoroughly." All eyes turned to Ambassador Yoon Jiwoo. She stood up slowly, using her walking stick for support. In 6 months, she had aged 20 years. "The sleepers remain exactly as they were," she said. "Dr. Kang Minho monitors them daily. They show increased neural activity, but we still cannot open the chambers." "Even if we could wake them," Vel Nash said with tired arrogance, "what could a few thousand primitive humans do? Look at the humans already awake in our galaxy. They serve as janitors and cargo workers. They have no weapons, no fleets, no military knowledge. Their own colony world fell in hours." Minho felt the familiar burn of shame and anger, but he said nothing. He had learned that speaking up only made things worse. Instead, he thought about the readings he had seen that morning. The neural activity in the chambers was beyond anything he had ever recorded. The sleeping humans were not just active. They were hyperactive, like their minds were running at impossible speeds. "We need to try something," Ambassador Jiwoo said, her voice breaking. "My people are dying. Every day more children are tortured on those broadcasts. If there is even a small chance the sleepers can help, we have to take it." "The chambers have resisted 800 years of our best efforts," replied Dr. Velkaris, who sat in the science advisory section. "We have used every tool, every technique, every weapon in our arsenal. Nothing works. The chamber technology is beyond our understanding." "Then perhaps," said a new voice, "we should ask someone who understands it better." Everyone turned to look at the speaker. It was Lee Do-hyun, a human cargo pilot who had been attending meetings as a refugee representative. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with the kind of confident walk that came from working dangerous jobs in space. His cargo ship had been destroyed while evacuating civilians from the Rigel Station attack. The human speaks out of turn, Velnash said coldly. The human has a point, Li Doyan replied, not backing down. You've been trying to force the chambers open for 8 centuries. But what if they're not supposed to be forced open? What if they're waiting for something specific? Waiting for what? Asked Dr. Velkaris. Li Doyan looked around the half-empty hall. Maybe they're waiting for us to need them badly enough. The idea was crazy, but desperation made crazy ideas seem reasonable. After the meeting, a small group gathered in Lab Section 7 to look at the chambers again. Ambassador Jiwoo was there, along with Dr. Velkaris, Commander Hrixnall, and a few other representatives. Li Doyan came too, even though nobody had invited him. Minho led them through the rows of chambers. The green lights cast strange shadows on the walls, and the humming sound seemed louder than usual. The neural activity displays were still showing impossible readings. These are your ancestors, Dr. Velkaris said to Li Doyan. Can you tell us anything about them? Li Doyan walked slowly between the chambers, looking at the sleeping faces inside. They don't look like any humans I know, he said quietly. We're traders, researchers, cargo pilots. We avoid fights. We keep our heads down. We try to get along with everyone. He stopped in front of Chamber 1847 where the sleeping woman rested. But these people, they look different. Look at their faces. Look at how they're built. These aren't farmers or traders. Minho looked closer. Li Doyan was right. The sleeping humans were different from the humans in the galaxy now. They were taller, stronger, with muscles that spoke of hard training. Their faces, even in sleep, had a hardness that modern humans lacked. The records we found with the chambers are incomplete, Ambassador Jiwoo said. We know they're from Earth's 22nd century, but the language is archaic. We can only translate fragments. Park Soo-jin, a human medical officer who had joined them, was examining the medical readouts from one of the chambers. These vital signs are incredible, she said. Heart rate, muscle density, neural development. These people are physical specimens beyond anything we see in modern humans. Could they be soldiers? Asked Commander Hrixnall. The beetle's compound eyes reflected the green light from the chambers. Or perhaps explorers, suggested Dr. Velkaris. Early human space pioneers who got lost and put themselves into cryosleep. But Minho was watching the neural displays again. As the group talked about the Dractul attacks, the readings spiked higher. When Commander Hrixnall described the torture broadcasts from New Geneva, the spikes went off the charts. They can hear us, Minho said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. Impossible, said Dr. Velkaris. The chambers block all external signals. Not signals, Minho said, understanding it for the first time. Not technology. They're connected to something else. Something we don't understand. He pulled up the neural readings on his tablet and showed them to the group. Watch what happens when we talk about the attacks. He began describing the fall of Kepler-7, the destruction of the Crystal Gardens, the screams of the dying Hanari. On his tablet, the neural readings from every chamber in the lab went crazy. Lines of data scrolled faster than anyone could read. They know, he whispered. They know everything that's happening. They've been listening for 800 years, waiting for what? Ambassador Jiwoo asked. Before Minho could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the emergency broadcast system crackled to life. All personnel to emergency stations. Dractul fleet detected in Sector 7. Estimated arrival in 4 hours. This is not a drill. The group looked at each other with fear in their eyes. Sector 7 was where Station Nexus Prime was located. The Dractul were coming for them. They want the chambers, Li Doyan said quietly. Thokmar knows about the sleeping humans. He's coming to destroy them before they can wake up. As if in response to his words, every neural display in the lab began flashing red warnings. The readings were beyond anything Minho had ever seen. It was like the sleeping humans were screaming inside their minds, raging against their eternal sleep. In Chamber 1847, the sleeping woman's face was no longer peaceful. Even with her eyes closed, she looked angry. She looked like someone who had been forced to watch terrible things for far too long. She looked like someone who was ready to wake up. The Dractul fleet arrived exactly when predicted. Dr. Kang Minho watched from the station's observation deck as 50 massive warships materialized out of hyperspace. Each ship was the size of a small city. painted black with red markings that looked like blood in the starlight. They moved in perfect formation, like predators closing in on wounded prey. War Chief Thokmar's voice echoed through every speaker on Station Nexus Prime. His message was broadcast live across the galaxy, just like all his other announcements of death and destruction. "Council cowards," he said, his voice full of cruel laughter. "You hide behind your walls while your people burn. Today I come for your greatest secret. Today I destroy your sleeping humans before they can interfere with my empire." Minho felt ice in his stomach. Somehow Thokmar knew about the chambers. He knew about the sleeping humans that the Council had kept secret for 800 years. Emergency alarms blared throughout the station. Most of the personnel were evacuating to emergency ships, but Minho could not leave. He had to check on the chambers one more time. He ran through the corridors as fast as he could, past panicking aliens and flashing red lights. Lab Section 7 was in chaos. The neural displays were showing readings that should have been impossible. Every single chamber was active beyond all previous measurements. The air itself seemed to vibrate with energy. Ambassador Yoon Ji-woo was there, along with Lee Do-hyun and Park Soo-jin. They stood in front of Chamber 1847, staring at the displays in amazement and fear. The neural activity started spiking the moment Thokmar's fleet appeared. Park Soo-jin said. Her voice was shaking. "It's like they know exactly what's happening." More than that, Lee Do-hyun said. He pointed to his tablet, which showed energy readings from the chambers. "Look at the power consumption. It's been climbing for weeks, but now it's off the charts. The chambers are drawing energy from the station's core reactor." Minho checked his own instruments. Lee Do-hyun was right. The chambers were pulling more power than the entire rest of the station combined. How was that possible? "We need to evacuate," Ambassador Ji-woo said. "The Draktul will be here soon, and when they arrive, they'll destroy everything." But as she spoke, something incredible happened. The lights in Chamber 1847 changed from green to bright blue. The humming sound grew louder, becoming almost musical. The neural display showed a pattern that looked almost like language. "It's trying to communicate," Minho whispered. The blue light spread to the next chamber, then the next. Like a wave rolling across the ocean, chamber after chamber began glowing blue instead of green. The humming became a harmony, thousands of voices singing together in perfect unity. "We need to get Dr. Velkaris," Park Soo-jin said. "The science team needs to see this." "There's no time," Lee Do-hyun replied. He was reading something on his tablet, his face pale with shock. "The Draktul fleet is charging weapons. They're going to destroy the station in minutes." That's when Minho realized the truth. He had been looking at the data wrong for months. The chambers weren't just monitoring galactic communications. They were monitoring galactic civilization itself. They had been watching, waiting, judging whether the galaxy was worth saving. "They're not just sleeping," he said out loud. "They're not lost colonists or failed explorers. They're guardians." "What?" Ambassador Ji-woo turned to look at him. "The chambers," Minho explained, the understanding rushing through him like electricity. "They're not random. They're placed here on purpose. The humans inside aren't civilians. They're soldiers. Elite soldiers from Earth's most violent period." He pulled up historical data on his tablet, information he had been studying for years. The 22nd century was humanity's bloodiest era. Endless wars, genetic enhancement programs, military technology that could destroy planets. These people lived through all of that. They fought in battles that would terrify entire alien civilizations. "But why are they sleeping?" Park Soo-jin asked. "Because they were too good at war," Minho said. "Humanity put their greatest warriors to sleep because they were afraid of what they might do. The chambers were programmed to wake them only if the galaxy faced a threat that required their skills." The blue light was spreading faster now, covering hundreds of chambers. The harmony was becoming louder, more complex. It sounded like a war song. On his communicator, Minho heard the evacuation countdown. "All personnel to emergency shuttles. Station destruction in 10 minutes. This is final warning," but nobody moved. They stood transfixed as the awakening process spread through the chamber room like wildfire. The air crackled with energy. The metal floor vibrated under their feet. "Look," Lee Do-hyun whispered. In Chamber 1847, the sleeping woman's eyes opened. They were not the confused, sleepy eyes of someone waking up from a long nap. They were the alert, focused eyes of a predator that had been waiting patiently for prey to come within striking distance. She looked directly at Minho through the chamber wall, and he felt like she could see into his soul. Other chambers began opening, not all at once but in a careful sequence. First a dozen, then 100, then more. The people inside did not stumble or fall when they emerged. They stood with perfect balance, their movements precise and controlled. The first person to fully emerge was a tall man with short black hair and scars on his arms. He was maybe 40 years old, with the kind of muscular build that came from a lifetime of hard training. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear, like someone giving orders in the middle of battle. "Admiral Kim Tae-jun, Terra Defense Force," he said. "Status report." Minho stared at him in shock. The man had been sleeping for 800 years, but he acted like he had just woken up from a short nap. "Admiral," Ambassador Jiwoo stammered, "the galaxy is under attack. The Draktul Empire has been conquering worlds, torturing civilians. The Council's military forces have failed. We don't know what to do." Admiral Kim Tae-jun nodded once. "We monitored the situation through the neural link. 800 years of galactic development, and you still haven't learned to handle predators." More people were emerging from their chambers now. A woman with general's insignia on her simple gray uniform introduced herself as General Oh Seulgi. A younger man with the bearing of a special forces operator said his name was Colonel Baek Jinho. One by one, humanity's ancient warriors returned to life. "How many Draktul ships?" Admiral Kim Tae-jun asked. 50 warships, Lee Do-hyun answered. "Bioweapons, sonic disruptors, nuclear capabilities?" "They're charging weapons to destroy the station." "Standard planetary assault formation," General Oh Seulgi observed. "Predictable tactics. They're used to fighting frightened civilians, not trained opposition." The awakened humans moved with purpose that was almost frightening. They spread through the chamber room, checking on their sleeping comrades, reading data displays, and having quick conversations in a military shorthand that the others could barely follow. "Admiral," Colonel Baek Jinho reported, "we have full neural link access to galactic communications. I'm reading Draktul fleet compositions, battle plans, and command protocols. Their security is laughably weak." "Expected," Admiral Kim Tae-jun replied. "Bullies rarely expect real resistance," Park Soo-jin found her voice. "What are you going to do?" Admiral Kim Tae-jun looked at her with eyes that had seen things no living person in the galaxy could imagine. "We're going to do what we were trained to do 800 years ago. We're going to remind the galaxy why humanity's warriors were put to sleep." He walked to the nearest communication panel and entered commands with fingers that moved too fast to follow. Within seconds, he had accessed the station's main broadcast system. "Draktul fleet," he said, his voice now being transmitted to every ship in the attacking force. "This is Admiral Kim Tae-jun of the Terra Defense Force. You have 60 seconds to retreat from this system." War Chief Thokmar's laughter echoed through the chamber room. "Humans. The galaxy's pets think they can threaten the Draktul Empire. We will enjoy breaking you slowly, just like we broke your colony world." Admiral Kim Tae-jun's expression did not change. 59 seconds. More chambers were opening now. Hundreds of ancient warriors emerged, each one moving with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. They wore simple gray uniforms without decoration, but they carried themselves like the most dangerous people in the galaxy. "Admiral," General Oh Seulgi said quietly, "the Draktul are opening fire." "Noted," Admiral Kim Tae-jun replied. "Time to work." Dr. Kang Minho had never seen anything like what happened next. Admiral Kim Tae-jun walked to the central control console of Lab Section 7 and placed his hand on a scanner that should not have recognized him. The scanner glowed blue, and suddenly every screen in the room came alive with data. "Full station control established," General Oh Seulgi reported. "Defensive systems online. Weapon platforms responding." "Station Nexus Prime has weapons?" Ambassador Yoon Jiwoo asked in shock. "Everything has weapons if you know how to use it," Colonel Baek Jinho replied. He was working at a console that had appeared from inside the wall. Minho had never seen that console before in 5 years of working in this lab. More chambers were opening every second. The awakening humans moved like they had rehearsed this moment for centuries. They took positions at hidden control stations, activated systems that Minho didn't know existed, and communicated in rapid bursts of military language. "Fleet composition analysis complete," reported a woman who had just emerged from Chamber 2156. Her uniform showed commander's insignia, and she moved with the precise efficiency of someone who had spent a lifetime in space battles. 50 Draktul ships, standard assault formation. They're using fear tactics instead of proper military strategy. Because they've never faced real resistance, Admiral Kim Tae-jun said. Show them what resistance looks like. The first Draktul energy beam hit Station Nexus Prime's shields. But instead of the destruction everyone expected, the station barely shook. Energy fields that nobody knew existed deflected the attack like it was nothing. Impossible, Dr. Velkaris whispered. She had appeared in the doorway, along with several other council representatives who had been too curious to evacuate. This station has standard council defenses. It can't survive a Draktul assault. This station, Admiral Kim Tae-jun said without looking away from his displays, was built by humans 800 years ago. Council engineers just added their own systems on top of ours. They never bothered to discover what was underneath. More awakened humans filled the chamber room. There were hundreds of them now, maybe thousands. Each one moved with purpose, taking their place in a military machine that had been waiting centuries to function again. War Chief Thokmar's voice crackled over the communication system. He sounded confused and angry. What is this trickery? Your shield should be gone. No trickery, Admiral Kim Tae-jun replied calmly. Just proper engineering. Would you like to see some more? The response came from weapons that emerged from hidden compartments all over the station. Not the crude energy cannons that most species used, but precise surgical tools of destruction that cut through Draktul shields like they were made of paper. 3 Draktul ships simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, not exploded. They were there one moment and gone the next, reduced to basic atoms by weapons that worked on principles the galaxy had forgotten. This is impossible, Thokmar screamed. Humans are weak. You serve stronger species. You clean floors and carry boxes. Those humans, General Osulgi said, her voice carrying across all communication channels, are humanity at peace. We are humanity at war. There is a difference, Lee Do-hyun grabbed Minho's arm. Look at the neural displays, he whispered. Minho looked. The chambers that had opened showed flat lines. Their occupants were awake and active. But the chambers that remained sealed showed activity beyond anything he had ever measured. Thousands more warriors were monitoring the battle, ready to wake if needed. How many of you are there? Ambassador Jiwoo asked. Enough, Admiral Kim Tae-jun replied simply. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 14 minutes. The Draktul fleet had been built to terrorize civilians and fight unprepared defenders. They had no experience with opponents who fought back with skill and overwhelming technological superiority. The awakened humans did not just destroy the Draktul ships. They captured them, boarding pods that moved faster than anything in the galaxy attached to enemy vessels. Within minutes, Draktul warriors who had never known defeat were overwhelmed by human soldiers who moved like ghosts and fought like demons. War Chief Thokmar tried to escape when he realized the battle was lost. His command ship broke formation and ran for the edge of the system, abandoning his fleet to save himself. Pursuit course laid in, Colonel Baek Jinho reported. Negative, Admiral Kim Tae-jun said. Let him run. We want him to deliver a message. What message? Park Soo-jin asked. Admiral Kim Tae-jun smiled for the first time since waking up. It was not a pleasant smile. That humanity's guardians are awake. That the galaxy's nightmares have returned. That anyone who hurts the innocent will answer to us. When the battle was over, the awakened humans began the cleanup. They freed the captured Draktul crews from their own ships and held them in comfortable but secure detention. They rescued the surviving populations from conquered worlds, using medical technology that seemed like magic to heal injuries that council medicine considered fatal. The torture broadcasts from New Geneva stopped. The human prisoners were freed. Their injuries healed, their families reunited. The Draktul who had hurt them were brought to justice. Not killed, but judged by their own victims and sentenced to rebuild what they had destroyed. Other Draktul fleets across the galaxy received War Chief Thokmar's report. Most surrendered immediately. Those who tried to continue fighting found themselves facing small groups of awakened humans who appeared from nowhere, struck with surgical precision, and disappeared like they had never been there. The war ended not with a great final battle, but with a quiet surrender. The Draktul Empire simply stopped existing as a military force. Their ships were captured, their weapons destroyed, their leaders brought before the very people they had tormented. Throughout it all, the awakened humans remained calm and professional. They showed no anger, no hatred, no desire for revenge. They simply did what needed to be done to restore peace to the galaxy. A week after the battle, Minho found Admiral Kim Tae-jun standing alone in the chamber room. Most of the warriors had already returned to their pods. The awakening process worked in reverse, putting them back into their eternal sleep. "Why are you going back to sleep?" Minho asked. "The galaxy still needs you. There might be other threats." Admiral Kim Tae-jun looked at the rows of sealed chambers, each one containing a guardian who would sleep until needed again. "Because our job is finished. The Draktul are defeated. The galaxy remembers what happens when predators go too far. That memory will keep the peace for generations. But what if something worse appears? Then we'll wake up again," the Admiral said simply. "That's what we're for." He walked to chamber 1847, where the woman with black hair was already sleeping peacefully again. Her neural displays showed the gentle patterns of dreams. But Minho knew she was still watching, still monitoring, still ready. "The galaxy will be peaceful for a long time now," Admiral Kim Tae-jun said as he approached his own chamber. "But if it ever forgets the lessons of mercy and justice, if it ever allows monsters like the Draktul to rise again, we'll be here." The chamber opened, and Admiral Kim Tae-jun stepped inside. The blue light faded to green as the systems activated. Within moments he was sleeping again, his face peaceful and calm. But Minho noticed something new on the chamber displays. A small message appeared on every monitor in the room, written in simple text that anyone could understand. "Monitoring. Peaceful sleep maintained. For now." The awakened humans had saved the galaxy, but their message was clear. They were watching. They were waiting. And if anyone ever again mistook humanity's kindness for weakness, they would learn the difference between humans at peace and humans at war. War Chief Thokmar had escaped the battle, but he spent the rest of his life telling anyone who would listen about the sleeping giants of humanity. Most thought he was crazy, broken by his defeat. But some listened and some remembered, and some made sure that the galaxy never again forgot what happened when humanity's guardians were forced to wake. The chambers hummed quietly in their endless vigil, and the galaxy slept safely under their protection.